Good day, everyone. Today, we will discuss about learning. Learning is a relatively permanent change in knowledge or behavior that results from practice or experience. There are three key points in learning. The first one is learning comes change. Examples of learning comes change. Tagaanta mo situation wherein nakakita kag hubog nga tawo. Di ba maka-judge dayon ta nga, palahubog man na siya, wala na siya kaugmaon. Pero kung maka-communicate ka niya sa situation nga, naka-communicate mong dagastoryanay mo, di ba makabantay ka nga nag-change ang imuhang behavior through niya, nag-change sad ang inyong, nag-evolve sad ang inyong communication wherein maka-learn ka sa mga experience nga iyang naagian, niyang imuhang nahibaw-an tung una, ma-change kay naa siya reason kung anong napunta siya nga sa sitwasyon nga sige siya kahubog. Am I right, class? The second key aspect is the change in knowledge and behavior has to be relatively permanent or long-lasting. Example, tagaan ta mag situation wherein naka-communicate ko og tawo wherein Bisaya ko, nya Tagalog siya. Sa tanto na mong storya na ay mga word nga ang akong nahibal-an nga parihami pero lahi ang meaning. Example ana ka ng langgam. Di ba ang atong langgam galupad pero ila kamang. So, ibutan siya ako sa akong mind sige sa akong knowledge nga kanang parihamig word lagi pero lahi ang among meaning. So, kita nga Bisaya usay mag-adjust sad nila sa Tagalog kay naay words pod nga dili sila kabalo ta nga ayo pero ang para nila laksot. Third key aspect of learning is learning takes place as a result of practice or through experience. Example, kanang situation nga nakaagitag kalisod, kapobrehon, walay makaon, kanang walay balon. Pero after ato nga nahitabo, di ba makaingon jud ta sa atong kagalingon nga, di maning kamot jud paayo nga dili na to mausab, di na jud to na ako maagian. Learning through consequences. One of the most fundamental ways in which people learn throughout their lives is through the consequences they receive for their behavior and actions. Psychologist B.F. Skinner was fascinated by the power of consequences to influence behavior, and his operant conditioning approach describes how learning takes place through consequences. So, psychologist B.F. Skinner, nakahimo siyang approach which he called operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is learning takes place when the learner recognizes the connection between behavior and consequences. Tagaan ta mo situation wherein nang operant conditioning. Kanang as a estudyante naningkamot kapag ayo. Kaya ang ganahan yung mga consequences is ma-honor ka o mahuman ka. So, ang imuhang operant conditioning diri sa kay kanang naningkamot ka, nag-working ka, nag-study pag-ayo para makuha nimo tong consequences, ma-negative man or ma-positive nga consequences.
Encouraging decide through positive and negative reinforcement. Reinforcement is a process by which probability that a desired behavior will occur is increased by applying consequences that depend on the behavior in a question. It is also a term used in operant conditioning to refer to anything that increases likelihood that a response will occur. Example, one of the manager's responsibilities is to ensure that subordinates learn to continue to perform desired behaviors consistently and dependably. In operant conditioning terms, managers need to increase the chance that will occur. First step in the use of reinforcement is to identify desired behaviors that the organization wants to encourage, reinforce. Surprisingly, correct identifying this behavior is not easy, it may be seem. So example of that, paying a commission on sales seems like a logical way to encourage salespeople to learn to satisfy customer. A professor who wants to encourage students to participate in class might reason that students have to regularly attend class in order to participate. Second step, the reinforcement process is to decide how to reinforce the behavior. There are two types of reinforcement. First is the positive reinforcement. Increases the probability that a behavior will occur by administering positive consequences to the employees who perform the behavior. These positive consequences are known as a positive reinforcers. To use positive reinforcement to facilitate the learning of desired behaviors. So example of the positive reinforcement is if your daughter clean her room without being asked, you could take her to the playground as a reward so that she will be more motivated to clean her room again. So the next one is the negative reinforcement. Increases the probability that a desired behavior will occur by removing or rescinding a negative consequences when an employee performs. The behavior desired, the negative consequences removed is called a negative reinforcers. So, the example of negative reinforcer is, as a student, we can also encounter negative reinforcement, especially to our teachers. A teacher can use negative reinforcement to motivate the student and change their behavior, especially to a student who are not putting too much attention in their education. Using reinforcement appropriately. Positive reinforcement is better for employees, managers, and the organization as a whole than negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement often has unintended side effects and make for an unpleasant work environment. Example of that is a supervisor who are continually complains may be resented to dislike. Even if positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement are equally successful in encouraging desired behaviors, the person or organization providing the reinforcement is likely to be viewed much more positively when positive reinforcement is constantly used. When using reinforcement to promote the learning of desired behaviors in organization, manager needs to exercise some cautions. When certain behaviors receive intensive reinforcement and others do not, employees may tend to focus on the former and ignore the latter.
Reinforcement schedule. Managers using reinforcement to encourage the learning and the performance of desired behaviors must choose whether to use continuous or partial reinforcement. When reinforcement is continuous, a behavior is reinforced every time it occurs. When partial reinforcement, a behavior is reinforced intermittently. Continuous reinforcement can result in faster learning than partial. But if the reinforcement for some reason is curtailed, continuously reinforced behaviors will stop occurring more quickly than partially reinforced behavior. Practical consideration whether reinforcement should be continuous or partial. A manager who is trying to encourage employees to use safety equipment, for example, may find continuous reinforcement infeasible. If she has to continually monitor her subordinates' use of safety equipment, she will never be able to get any work done. Managers who decide to use partial reinforcement can choose from four schedules: the fixed interval schedule, the variable interval schedule, the fixed ratio schedule, and the variable ratio schedule. Fixed interval schedule, the period of time between the occurrences of each instances of reinforcement is fixed or set. Example, an insurance agent whose supervisor takes him out to lunch at a fancy restaurant on the last Friday of the month If he has written a large number of policies during that month is being reinforced is 2 weeks. Then the variable interval schedule, the amount of time between reinforcements varies around a constant average. Example, the owner may watch and reinforce a given employee once a week, once every 3 weeks, or once a month, but over a 6-month period, the average amount of the of time between reinforcement is 2 weeks. Next, the fixed ratio schedule. A certain number of desired behaviors must occur before reinforcement is provided. Example, employees who are paid 100 pesos for every 3 circuits boards disassemble are being reinforced on a fixed ratio schedule. And then the last, ratio schedule. The number of desired behaviors that must occur before reinforcement varies around a constant average. Example, a manager who allows an employee to leave early after she has stayed late for several evenings is a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement. The choice of a schedule or partial reinforcement often depends on practical considerations. First, the particular behavior encouraged. Next, type of reinforcer used. And the last, the nature of the employee's job. Shipping. Sometimes a desired behavior is unlikely to occur on its own or at any given point in time because an individual does not have the skills and knowledge necessary to perform the behaviors because the behavior can only evolve out the practice or experience. The reinforcement of successive and closer approximations to a desired behavior is known as shaping. Shaping is a particularly effective when employees need to learn complicated sequences of behavior. When it is unlikely that employees will be able to perform the desired behaviors, all of once, manager reinforce closer and closer approximations to the desired behavior to encourage to gradually acquire the skills and expertise needed to perform
Discouraging
at an
undesired behaviors through
adequate
extension
level.
and punishment. Just as managers need to ensure that employees learn to perform desired behaviors dependably, they also need to ensure that employees learn how to perform undesired behaviors. So there are the two main operant condition techniques reduce the probability of undesired behaviors. First is extension. Ang extension usa ni ka non-event kuwang ni siya sa reinforcement. Imbis nga makakuha og maayo para mapaligon ang pamatasan sa walay mahitabo, dili ni molihok para makuha ang katuyuan nga pagpaligon. Second is punishment. Ang punishment usa ni siya sa kaepektibo nga paagi sa pagbago sa pamatasan pero og gigamit siya sa sakto pwede na jud na ay epekto pareha ng mahadlok or maagresibo ang usa ka employee. So according to the principles of DT operant conditioning, all behaviors, good or bad, are controlled by reinforcing consequence. Thus, any behavior that occurs is performed because the individual is receiving some form of reinforcement for it. If managers wish to lessen the probability that an undesired behavior will occur, they need to first determine what is currently reinforcing the behavior and then remove the source of reinforcement. Once the undesired behavior ceases to be reinforced, its frequency diminishes until it no longer occurs. This process is called extension. This is the same as negative punishment. So, bisag unsang pamatasan, maayo man daotan kontrolado jud na nila. Kung gusto sa manager nga maminusan ang mga dili gusto nga pamatasan, kinahanglan sa nilang mahibaw-an kung unsang kinaiyahang nakapalig-on. Dayon ilang tangtangon ng kung asa gasugod ang reinforcement, so anha sila makakuha og ideya nga muna ang nga muhinay na ang record sa batiog kinaiya. There are cases where managers do not have the time to wait for extension to listen or eliminate some undesired behaviors. Certain behaviors are so detrimental or dangerous they need to stop immediately. Just as a parent can't rely on extension to stop a child from touching his hot stove. A manager cannot rely on extension to eliminate high and desirable behaviors in the workplace, such as sexual harassment or operating heavy equipment in a dangerous fashion. Under such circumstances, a manager can try to eliminate undesired behavior by using punishment, or also known as positive punishment, and administering a negative consequence when the undesired behavior occurs. So, naitay nga ang manager walay panahon sa pagkuwat sa extension para maminusan or mawa ang mga dili gusto nga pamatasan. Kinahanglan nga ila dayong wagtangon ang pamatasan nga di maayo. So ang manager gabuhat og balaod nga og kinsa ang bati og kinaiya ila dayon ning silutan kay mao man ay makabati og record sa ilahang nga kumpanya. Punishment can have some unexpected side effects and should be used only when necessary. It not only has the potential to threaten the employee's self-respect, but can also create so much resentment and negative feelings toward the punisher and the organization as a whole that the employee might want to retaliate. Thus, when punishment is used, managers need to be very careful that while eliminating the undesired behavior, they do not create excessive hostility or negative feelings. Wala lang gigamit ilahang silot. Kinahanglan jud nga mag-amping pag-ayo ang mga manager while ilang giwagtang ang dili gusto nga kinaiya, dili sila makamugna og pagdumot or negative nga mga pagbati sa ilang empleyado kay og ilang padabian ang ilahang silot nga di na sad maayo na posibilidad nga ang mga employee makamugna og daghang kasukog negative nga pagbati ato sa tigsilot mo makanahuna na lang na og mubaws. Guidelines can help to ensure that punishment has its intended effect and does not generate negative side effects. Try to downplay the emotional element involved in punishment. Remember, you are punishing the person's undesirable behavior, not the person. Make sure that choosing negative consequence is indeed a punishment for the individual, and punish the undesired behavior immediately. Make sure employees know why they are being punished. Guidelines can help to ensure that punishment has its intended effect and does not generate negative side effects. Try to avoid punishing an employee in front of others. Although public punishment might seem like a good idea because it serves as a warning to others, it is likely to humiliate the individual being punished, to reduce his or her esteem, and make coworkers uncomfortable. Remember, the goal is to eliminate a person's undesirable behavior, not his or her self-respect. When possible, provide employees with a desired behavior in place of the undesired behavior. Learning from others. Another theory of learning is the social cognitive theory, also referred to as a social learning theory. Albert Bandura, one of the principal contributors to social cognitive theory, suggests that any attempt to understand how people learn must also take into account a person's feelings and thoughts, recognitions, and their observations of the world around them, that is, their social environment. Social cognitive theory acknowledges the importance of the personal learning process by taking cognitive processes into account. So, giila ni siya sa social nga paghunahuna kung sa kamahinungdanon sa tao ang pagkatuon o dili niya nga ibaliwa. Cognitive processes are the various thought process that people engage in. From the perspective of this theory, employees actively process information from the social environment and those around them when they learn. In social cognitive theory, learning from observing others perform a behavior is called vicarious learning. When vicarious learning occurs, a person, the learner, observes another person, or the model perform a behavior. The learner observes the effect of the model's behavior on the environment it is reinforced, and when an appropriate situation arises, the learner imitates the model's behavior. So example, ikaw gitrain ka sa usa ka empleyado sa imuhang pag-observe sa kung unsay gitudlo sa usa ka empleyado nimo, mahimo nga ikaw makat-on sa buot pasabot sa usa ka empleyado sa dihang makat-on ka, mas makatudlo pa noon ka sa uban nga tudloanan pa. So mas makatagatay jud ang imuhang nakatunan o imuhang learning sa isig ka empleyado ang imong nakatunan. Social cognitive theory also emphasizes the importance of self-efficacy, a person's belief about his or her ability to perform a particular behavior successfully. In the learning process, self-efficacy has powerful effects on learning because people try to learn only those behaviors that they think they will be able to perform successfully. Self-efficacy affects learning in three ways. The first is the self-efficacy influences the activities and goals that individuals choose for themselves. Employees with a low level of self-efficacy may never try to learn how to perform challenging tasks because they think they will fail at them. Such employees tend to set relatively low goals for themselves. Conversely, an individual with high self-efficacy is likely to try to learn how to perform demanding tasks and set high personal goals. Employees learn what they think they are able to learn. So, mga empleyado nga naiubos ug tan-aw sa ilang kaugalingon, pwedeng di musuway sa pagkat-on. Unsaon paghimo sa buhaton tungod kay ganuna naman sila daan nga mapakyas sila ana. Next, second is self-efficacy affects learning by influencing the effort that individuals exert on the job. Employees with high self-efficacy generally work hard to learn how to perform new behaviors because they are confident that their efforts will be successful. Employees with low self-efficacy may exert less effort when learning how to perform complicated or difficult behaviors, not because they are lazy but because they don't think the effort will pay off. Sama sa akong giingon mga empleyado nga naiubos og pagtanaw sa ilang kaugalingon, pwedeng dili kaayo na sila maningkamot nga makat-on sa trabaho, dili tungod kay sila tapulan, tungod na kay wala sila magunahuna nga ang paningkamot mabayran. Third is a self-efficacy affects the persistence with which a person tries to master new and sometimes difficult tasks. Because employees with high self-efficacy are confident that they can learn how to perform given tasks, they are likely to persist in their efforts even in the face of the temporary setbacks or problems. Conversely, employees with low self-efficacy who think they are unlikely to learn a difficult task are likely to give up as soon as obstacle appear, the going gets little tough. Kanang empleyado nga naay dakong pagsalig sa kagalingon, masaligon na sila nga makat-on kung unsay trabaho nga kung unsang trabaho ipahimo sa modyod nga mopadayon sila sa ilang paningkamot bisan pa og temporary pa nga sipyat o problema. Kaysa ang empleyado nga ubos og patanaw silang kagalingon nga nakinahuna nga dili sila makat-on sa lisod nga buhaton. Lagmit yun na nga muhunong sa diha nga makita ang kanang trabaho nga medyo lisod yun nga para nila. Thank you.